Hey, I'm Brad Miller, and I'm here with Jason Medford, and today we are walking the spiritual path with you. And today we wanted to talk about some of the negative stuff that we can kind of feel and get into: fear, anxiety, worry, um, some of those negative, well, kind of lower vibrational emotions that just don't really make you feel good. And there can be a lot of things that bring about these feelings. Um, and we're not talking when we talk about fear here, we're not talking about like I'm being chased by a tiger. Part of the fear, like that's something completely different. This is the fear of what might happen, kind of the what if negative kind of happens such situation, and the unknowing, the unknown. So that kind of fear, the anxiety from not knowing what's going to happen. And so I know a lot of people experience that at various times for various reasons. And today I thought it would be something good that we would talk about how you deal with those kind of emotions. Um, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit on more of a practical standpoint too today, because I mean, it's we don't like to feel these things, but they're healthy to have and healthy to process. And maybe we'll kind of talk about why we have these emotions, kind of being part of the human experience and why they're not a bad thing. And again, just kind of how you can deal with them and process them.
Yeah, because I think it's a practical thing, and for people that are listening, some of you might be like, "What? How is this spiritual?" Right? Sort of a thing. Well, it is. Trust us. We're going to talk a little bit more about it, and like Brad said, we don't necessarily want to label or judge things as good or bad, even though again, Brad and I on here may make that slip up, right? But the idea is not to judge anything as good or bad, but hanging out in lower vibration emotions and feelings is not good for us spiritually. It's not good for us even physically in our body, right? Because a lot of dis-ease, disease that shows up in people's body is caused by what? Fear and anxiety, right? Those two things are things that crop up all the time. The person who's afraid to get a cold, who thinks they're going to get cancer or whatever other disease, guess what?
Hypochondriacs.
They're
Yep.
the ones that get it. And again, a lot of times people don't think that they're doing it, but they're actually doing it to themselves. And again, it's not a bad thing necessarily to feel some of these emotions or feelings. It's just not a good idea to hang out there
Mhm.
long, right? And it shows or pulls in some of the duality in this life that we're experiencing, and the duality actually helps us to grow because we can see the contrast. Yeah, we can appreciate the sun shining on us when we've been in cold and cloudy weather for a while. Then when we see the sun, we are have an opportunity to be more grateful for it, to not take advantage of it, and to see it, in that way. And I think fear and anxiety are a similar way. Sometimes we may feel at peace, we may feel happy, but sometimes we kind of forget, and maybe we take a little bit advantage of how good things are for us, that when we get into a state of fear or anxiety for a while, it's like, oh, well, now I remember how that
Mhm.
feels and it's not so good, and I'm so grateful, and I'm going to move back right to this other area. And
Mhm.
so I think it's, and again, upon our spiritual path, it's learning how to change our frequency and vibration. And so one of the best indicators is the emotions and feelings that we're having, right? And whether we're going to get stuck in emotions or if we're just going to have some feelings and we're going to move through. In fact, I think it was
Mhm.
just recently one of the posts that I put out on social media was from Jung, Carl Jung, who effectively that's what he said is like emotions are when you get stuck in your feelings. So, it's okay to feel. I mean, we're all human. We need to have some feelings, but don't get stuck in them,
Mhm.
is the whole point. And so I think, the more that we're aware when we start to have that, we just kind of do, whoop, time out, just a minute. Let me stop. Let me think about, why am I doing this? Is there something maybe that I need to process? Is there something that I need to let go of? Right. So I can
Attachment.
let
Yeah.
in something else. And so while it seems really simple and it's not sitting on your yoga mat going om for 4 hours, it's probably some of the most important work that we all do or can do every day if we choose to.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, and we tend to think that, emotions, anger, all these things are bad, like you said, because we don't like to feel them. They don't make us feel good. They lead to disease, things like that. But having these emotions is a critical part of our human experience. Like that's why we're here. Like we came to Earth so that we can have this human experience. We can have the sensations of feelings. We can feel, yes, we can feel happiness and peace and gratitude and love and all those great things, but we also are here to feel the pain. We're here to feel the anger, the shame, the anxiety, all those things, because like you said, Jason, it helps us be able to better understand the positives. You can't really understand love unless you understand the negative emotions on the other side of it.
Mhm.
You can't, you can't do peace unless you have anger, things like that. You can't really appreciate, you can't fully understand, if you want to use that word, understand what those positive emotions are without the negatives to compare it to. Like you said, that's a great example of the sun. You don't appreciate maybe how nice it is to have a sunny day until you've been in a rainy, dreary, cold, wet, area for a couple of days. Then the sun comes out and you're like, "Ooh, I missed that so much. This is so great having that sun." But otherwise, like we had, like over the summer, we had a drought. We had sun almost every single day and it was warm and didn't have any
Mhm.
rain,
Mhm.
and so we kind of took for granted the sun because of how often we had it. And we had ended up taking taking for granted the rain and the benefits of the rain until we didn't have rain for several months. And then all of a sudden we're like, ooh, missed that rain. Sure would be nice to have some rain. Would it be nice if it was raining today? And so just because we had that all the opposite experience, could we really appreciate the things that we did have and what the other one is. And so I think it's really important that you make sure that you're not trying to um, push down or totally reject having these emotions. Like saying, hey, I'm never going to feel angry. That's not healthy because you're going to feel anger at some point. Something's going to come up and it's going to cause you to feel anger. Like you said, that we don't want to hang on it, but we also don't want to minimalize it. We don't want to try
Right.
to just ignore it or dismiss it. We have to process it. And so that's, I think, something, that's really important to talk about here is how we process those emotions as they come in.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times too, it's pushing through when those things come up. So you were just
Mhm.
talking about the weather. I just got back from a big trip around the country driving. And interesting thing that happened was, we drove into Oklahoma, and all of a sudden, near about, I'm trying to remember where it was exactly, but I know, I think it was when we hit Oklahoma City. All of a sudden, the wind really started blowing. It started raining hard, overcast, very stormy. We hit a storm like that earlier where we had to pull over for a few minutes because it was just so heavy that we couldn't see. And so we came into Oklahoma that way, right? We'd had sun and everything most of the time. We hit Oklahoma City, overcast, raining, hard raining, right? And it continued, and it continued, and it continued, and it continued, right? All the way through Oklahoma, all the way through Texas, all the way through New Mexico. And literally, when we hit the Arizona border, guess what? Sun is out,
Hmm.
right? The sun is shining. And so I think, you know, again, it's like the only way for us to get through the physical weather was to just keep driving, right?
Mhm.
Just keep going to be able to get back to the place of sunshine. And it's that way a lot of times with us in these emotions is when we find ourselves in it, the only way through it is to go through it, right? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, if something happens and, you know, an old form of anger, an old pattern of, you know, anxiety or fear, or you know, something comes up, we have to push through, we have to feel it, we have to deal with whatever's causing it, we have to let it go, right? We have to let it go so then we can let back in the emotion that we want to feel. And so, you know, like you said, it's I could have chosen to just sit there in Oklahoma City and said, "Oh, it's raining. I'm just going to sit here in Oklahoma City, and we're not going to drive until it clears up." Well, guess what would have happened? Because there were tornado warnings in Oklahoma City literally a couple of hours after we drove through. So had we just sat there and said, "I'm not going to do this. I'm going to wait until it clears up," hey, we could have gotten hit by a tornado at the same point, right? So is it better to sit and wallow in some of these feelings or get trapped in our emotions, or better to just plow our way through, deal with
Mhm.
it, let go, you know, whatever it is, and move on? Because I think that's one of the practical things about this is, you know, a lot of people get in fear and anxiety, and we can talk about past, present, future and how that kind of relates too. But I think a lot of people stay stuck in fear because they're not willing to let go of the fear. But you have to let go of the fear before you can let in whatever else, whatever ever other vibration and frequency you want to feel. You have to let it go first. You have
Mhm.
to turn the channel, right? If you're stuck on that static on the radio and you don't let the static go, you're just going to be sitting there on static until you actually do something.
Yeah, I think anger is a big one for that, about needing to let it go. I think
Mhm.
people just kind of sit there and wallow in the anger and just kind of let it build and fester, and they just don't want to give it up. They just want to hold on to it, and they hit on it tighter and tighter, and it just kind of builds and grows until they explode with the
Yeah,
anger.
and what's interesting about anger
Mhm.
is because David Hawkins did what he called the levels of consciousness.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is, you know, at least in his vernacular and how he did it, below 200 are kind of the not so good vibrations. And then once you hit 200, it's kind of positive going up from that point to 500, 550, which is kind of unconditional love. But what's interesting is when you look at his scale, anger is higher than a lot of other emotions. And you might not, it didn't make sense to me the first time I saw it.
Mhm.
But when anger is used properly, what it does is it gives you courage to take action and do something different. But if you just hold on to that anger and you don't ever let it go so you can move into courage or something else to take action, then you're just stuck in that
Mhm.
emotion of anger. And so many people are there, you know, oh, I'm so angry about this or that, or this person did this or that. And how many times when you ask them, you know, it's like, well, when did that happen? 50 years ago. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? 50, you're going to choose to still be
Mhm.
angry about something from 50 years ago. And literally, I had an interaction with somebody in my family recently, and they tried to bring up something and shame me about something that happened over 50 years ago. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You're still hanging on to this. You're still trying to shame me. You're still trying to make me feel. I don't know why this person is continuing to hold on to it, but it was 50 years ago, right? And obviously it triggered me a little bit. And so again, I had to let it go,
Mhm.
let in, move on, right? At that point. And I think that's why sometimes these things happen to us where we feel like, oh, I dealt with that already in the past. And then it comes up again, and you're like, what? I thought I already dealt with that. Well, you dealt with a piece of it, but it's not all gone yet because that's why we are getting
Mhm.
triggered or agitated into it, right? And so, like I said, when this thing happened to me, it was, you know, six months ago, something like that now. I think I finally let it go, you know, because again, I just saw how silly and stupid it was and why I would even allow this person to draw me back into any kind of shame about something I did when I was a toddler. I mean, really? Really? You know, it's like so but it made me see something I hadn't seen before about the person too. And so now I have better boundaries.
Mhm.
This person will not come close to me, will not be allowed to do some of those things. It's been a pattern for them for over 50 years. It's just not going to happen anymore. I'm not going to deal with it. And, you know, again, that's where it's like we got to let it go
Mhm.
to move on.
Yeah. So the question then is, how do you let it go? How do you move on? And I'll tell you what I tell my daughter, because she, being 9 years old, can be quick to anger about things. I tell her, go clean your room and stomp, 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 huff, 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 back to her room. Like, she gets angry very quickly. And luckily for me, if I go up and I tickle her, I can usually make that anger go away pretty quickly. But at some point, I'm not going to be there to tickle her. At some point, tickling is not going to work. So I've been trying to help her to be able to deal with these emotions that she feels so that she can process them and move beyond them. The anger, particularly, is the one that kind of comes up a lot. So what I tell her to do is the first thing is you need to have awareness that you're feeling this, right? Being aware that, hey, you know what? I'm feeling something here. It's not good. It's not normal, like my normal standard, what it is. There's something going on. There's some feelings I'm feeling here. And then give it a name. What is it? Well, it's in this case, it's anger, or maybe it is fear, you're feeling, or anxiety, whatever that emotion might be that you feel, kind of give it a name so you can say, okay, this is it, and allow yourself to experience it, to feel it. Okay, this is what anger feels like for me. This is what guilt feels like to me. Because that will help you the next time you feel it to say, oh, I know what that is. That's fear. That's anger, and be able to process it much quicker. Once you figured out what it is, you give it a name, you kind of let yourself feel it. And it's really important that you actually let yourself experience it, not sit on it, not, hang around with it. But, okay, this is anger, this feeling I'm feeling, this is, maybe it's tightness, maybe you feel a clenching sensation, maybe you feel heat, um, maybe you just are reacting to things as opposed to kind of responding and thinking through things. Are just coming out of your mouth and you're taking actions and moving around and you're not even thinking about, whatever it is that you're doing, experience that feeling, whatever it is, and then you got to let it go, and then you got to send it away and move your attention to something else. Move it to the emotion, the feeling that you want to be having instead. So for her, I suggested think about love. She's got two rabbits that she loves. Obviously, she loves us as her mom and dad. She loves her grandparents. She knows a lot of people, animals, things like that that she loves in her life. So focus on the love. What does that feel like? and you move your thoughts to that, because your thoughts hit your feelings hit your vibrations, and your vibrations then impact your frequency. So if you start thinking the happy thoughts, thinking about things that make you feel happy, about things that you love and that love you, that's going to change those emotions. It's going to put you in that emotional state that you're trying to get to. So that's kind of the path that I try to lead her down whenever she gets upset. Now, obviously, she usually doesn't want to listen to me when I tell her those things. But I think at some point, the repetition and keep on pushing, and reminding her every time, here's what you need to do. I think it's going to sink in, and she's going to be able to start processing things on her own with it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a good process because I use kind of a similar, similar sort of thing when I'm trying to right myself, if you will, right? Is and a lot of times we don't even consciously realize sometimes when we've moved into a different frequency and we're, emitting something else in what we're actually doing. And until we're made aware of it, and then we can, like you said, start to, name it, feel it, let it go,
Hmm.
let in whatever else it is that you want to have in your life. And and a lot of times that means having to move your attention, right? To move your attention to something else. And so, like I said, when when I feel annoyed, that's a feeling that I am working on, is feeling annoyed. I'm not angry per se, but I get annoyed
Hmm.
when maybe things don't go my way, or I'd planned this, or I'm walking to go do something, and all of a sudden, something else comes in. I get asked to do something else, and all of a sudden it feels like I'm juggling four or five things, and it's like, well, that annoys me. Well, and I can choose to let it annoy me, or I can let it go, right? And so that's one
Hmm.
I've been working with. So
Yeah.
when somebody annoys me, or I allow myself to get annoyed with something, it's again stopping and recognizing it. And then how I try to help change is, specifically if it's about a person, like if it's somebody that's annoying me, right? And again, that's the wrong word, that I'm choosing to be annoyed by whatever they're doing. Then I stop and say, okay, I release this annoyance and I let in, replace it with love, gratitude, whatever it might be. And
Hmm.
then I stop and I say to myself in my head, maybe some things that I'm grateful for about this other person. Oh, I'm so grateful that they do this or that they do that, or I love them because they do this. And so I run that through in my head until I can feel like I'm no longer annoyed and that I'm back to the place where I should be.
Hmm.
And sometimes it takes me a little while. Sometimes
Sure.
literally it's 30 seconds
Hmm.
and it changes. And I think, that's the important thing, is that we can choose to decide how long we want it to take. It can
Mm.
be literally almost instantaneously if
Yep.
that's what we choose. If that's what we choose, it can literally be that quick. Or we can choose to stew in it for 50 years. It's up to us. It's our choice, right? And obviously I prefer one way over the other, but I still hang on to some things longer than I
Sure.
probably should anyway, right? I mean, I'm still human. I'm still working through all this stuff as well. But it's that's part of the process, right? And it's
Hmm.
it's learning how to spiritually get ourselves back to that frequency and vibration where we want to be. Because when we're there, we're not only healing ourselves, but we're healing others around us, we're healing the earth, we're healing the cosmos, everything. the more that we're in those higher vibration states, the more good, the more light we're actually sharing with everybody.
Mhm.
And it helps us too, because all healing happens because of feeling a higher vibration. That's it. Healing happens that way, right? You don't have to go to talk therapy. You don't have to self hypnotize yourself. You don't have to do anything else. Just like when you cut your finger, right? And I got, where's it at? Oh, right here on my knuckle. You can't see it now, but I did
Mhm.
something to my knuckle. I don't know how, but I scraped it off and it was bleeding a couple days ago. And I kind of wiped it off, and the first day or so, every time I touched it, it kind of was ouch, sort of thing. But
Mhm.
my body knows how to heal itself. I don't have to sit there and think about it, right? Okay, sometimes I may have to do some basic things like wash it and put a band-aid on it, depending on how big it is, right? There might be some little things I need to do, but my body and my soul know how to heal itself. Your body and your soul know how to heal you. And so all you have to do is feel a higher vibration. That's it.
Mhm.
It'll take care of the rest of it. So, the more that we can be in those states, uh, and the quicker that we get there, the more healing comes to us,
Mhm.
and it's as simple as that. And, but again, we can sit in it as long as we want to. um because I know for me, I keep learning the same lessons over and over again. Because there's some things that I haven't let go, but especially this last month, let go, let in, let go, let in, let go, let in, let go, let in has been one of the things I'm working on.
Mhm.
um, and then, again, like I said, that's kind of what I do. Another thing, if I know sometimes people just feel like their mind is racing and they just can't stop it. Another little trick that I've used, and they use this in therapy and other things a lot, is what I call 10 things. 10 things is, if you feel like you're just going berserk and you don't know what to do, just stop and name 10 things around you: clock, statue, skull, uh, you know, well, another skull. Uh, anyway, right. So, but go around and start to, thermometer. And by the time you name and call out those 10 things, often you have forgotten what first got you wrapped around the axle. And if it doesn't work, do 10 more, right? But that has also been pretty effective for me, when I really felt like I'm just can't focus.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've noticed that with my daughter, some when she'll do things like I'll tell her, all right, you're supposed to be cleaning your room. Get to it. And I leave and I come back 3 minutes later and she's messing with something else, not actually cleaning. I might say, get to it and kind of give a little bit angry. But I'm finding that it's becoming a lot easier for me to immediately switch from that kind of forceful kind of response to her not minding to joking and laughing again, to kind of switching to a higher vibration. And I know that's something, again, like something I've been working on too. And that's where I can actually see it making a difference when it comes to dealing with her. Whereas before, I know when she was younger and I would tell her to do something and she wouldn't do it, I just get all up about it and angry and I'd be yelling and I'd be angry for 10 minutes later. And now I say, maybe a little bit gruff to kind of get my point across. And then before I know it, I'm back joking with her and everything else. Um,
Mhm.
and I find that also helps her then get into a better mood too, because she picks up on my better mood. So it works that way too. But um, one thing we didn't actually talk about in any of these methods is focusing on the why, focusing on why we're feeling this. Why are we angry? Why are we upset or annoyed or whatever? And that's because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why you're
No,
angry. It doesn't matter
no,
why you're annoyed at the end of the day to get rid of it.
no, it doesn't. And I think, when we started this before we hit record, we're like, this is probably a 2 episode one. And I think it probably is. And so maybe we even talk a little bit more about that in the next
Part
episode
two.
too, part two that we're going to kind of record next anyway. But we don't want to, we try not to make these things too long for everybody. But I think too, there's some really practical things that maybe I'll share that happened on my trip just recently that were some of these in practice, letting go, letting in, sort of things as well. Because I think it's easy to talk about in general the fear, the anxiety, the anger, but
Hmm.
this is happening to us all the time during the day. And so maybe we can kind
Hmm.
of concretize a little bit more some real things, right, that we go through, and maybe a little bit about the why too, because like you said, it doesn't really matter, but it does in a way too. Um,
Hmm.
so I think we'll maybe jump into
Yeah.
that
Yeah. The
in the next
processing the
episode.
emotions, the why doesn't matter to process
No,
them, but to try to avoid them in the first place, that's where the why comes into place.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that'd be good. So stay tuned next week. And hopefully
For the
that these get put in the right,
continuation,
and hopefully these get put in the right order because that could be awkward if they don't, and this one
uh,
gets after the other one.
I
But
think they will be. I'll put them in the document the right way. But who knows? Who
put them in
knows? We'll
to make
see.
sure they
We'll
get put
see.
in this. So with that, we're going to leave you to your emotions. Hopefully they're positive ones, but if not, you now know how to handle them until you see us again next time. Hope you have a great week, and we will catch you guys out on the next episode.
All right. See you, everybody. Thanks.